Showtime.
It's the pre-party with J. Cal.
We are professional wrestling.
I'm building an alliance.
You are tuned into
the absolute top of the mountain, the ultimate professional wrestling.
Alliance-wrestling.com.
Well, here it is, ladies and gentlemen, another episode of the Pre-Party, a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance and the United Wrestling Network. My name is J. Cal, and week after week, every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific, we're here. And we're here to talk about the NWA and the United Wrestling Network. And we're here to talk with you. Because, damn it, the fans are an important part of the show. The fans are the reason why the wrestling's happening. And, well, we're here to talk, baby. So what do you guys want to talk about? I have a couple things on my mind that I wouldn't mind talking about. First and foremost is, what are your expectations when the National Wrestling Alliance returns? What are your expectations? What do you want to see from the NWA? There's been a mass exodus of talent. The roster will not look the same when NWA Power returns. Hell, NWA Power, when it went off the air back in March of 2020, I mean, we had an entirely different looking roster. Our champions were Thunder Rosa, the women's world champion, probably the MVP of the National Wrestling Alliance in 2020. I could definitely say that. Our tag team champions were Eli Drake and James Storm. Our national champion was Aaron Stevens, and our TV champion was Zicky Dice. Well, that's changed quite significantly, hasn't it? When you look at that championship roster page, right? We've got Nick Aldis. He still holds the 10 pounds of gold. He's had one successful defense already this year against Jason Strife. We've got tag team champions in JR Kratos and Aaron Stevens. We have a TV champion in Elijah Burke. We have the national champion in Trevor Murdoch. And of course, our women's champion, Serena Deep, competing at high levels for AEW. I mean, yeah, you can't really complain about that, right? Oh, looks like I'm having some issues here. Hang on just a second, guys. You guys see me on Twitch? Anyways, let me check one more thing. It looks like there's having some issues there on Twitch. Nope, okay, we're good. Okay, so we're good to go. Sorry, user. So what I was going with is, we've got these great champions ready to be showcased, but of course there's no product yet to speak of. Now, I see a lot of your comments already. Okay, so let's just go to comments. Okay, so DKM says he can see me. You guys can see me here. LSV 1995. I'm not sure who you are, but yeah, the experience is a little bit different between YouTube and Twitch. The way that the product is displayed is a little bit different, but ultimately it's the same thing. Ryan Romano, I'm glad that you're here, man. I hope you're doing well. I saw you got some positive news the other day, so keep up that PMA, buddy. Willie Bowen, thanks so much for being here, Willie. I really do appreciate you being here every weekend and week out. Oh, it's Lamb. Oh, that makes sense, Lamb. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Everyone else is here. Okay. So where I was going is basically, and DK has a great point. He says, TV champion, no TV. Yeah, I mean, what are your expectations for the National Wrestling Alliance in 2021? I mean, we all had these grand expectations last year. Again, the last episode aired in March, but the TV really wrapped up in well, I can't even say TV really. I could say the Power tapings wrapped up in early January. So, like, I mean, this time last year, we still had expectations for a Crockett Cup. We still had expectations for Circles Squared. We still had expectations for Power to return. We were still thinking that there might be more pay-per-views and more television tapings. And unfortunately, we didn't get any of that. Now, if I'm going to read the tea leaves a little bit, we do know that when the NWA started their Patreon account, Carneyland, that the whole premise was to sponsor like the TV show. It was supposed to kind of be a non-wrestling scripted format. I don't really know what to call Carneyland. I didn't really get it. I didn't really enjoy it. I wasn't really sure what the point of it was. But it was supposed to be powered by their Patreon account, which was to create a new revenue stream while times are getting tough. And there was some good that came from that Patreon account. I still think Inside the NWA was a great segment that they should do every week. And do that podcast, live stream, YouTube video, whatever you want to call it, every week. I think that was a great source of information and entertainment. I think what's causing all this was interesting to hear stories from Nick Aldis' career when he was also, usually accompanied by a guest like James Storm or Crimson or someone of that nature. I think these were all good stuff, and I really think that these kind of elements hopefully continue to happen in the new year. But what are your expectations? I see a lot of the comments, so I'll go to them. I'll read some of your comments before I kind of get into what I was talking about. Dave Scooby says, to show off your champions, I'd have the TV title and tag titles highlighted on the re-debut episode. Many of the NWA audience may not know who the champs are now. Absolutely. Terry's here. Hey, Terry, welcome to the show. Lamb brings it up. DKM says it's a joke, referring to the TV champion with no TV. Maybe highlight them in videos like the thing Ring of Honor did for every worker, every match. I get what you're saying, Lamb. So to reintroduce the characters, the champions, with like vignette promos. I get that. Willie says he expects good wrestling matches and great wrestling from both the Power and United Wrestling Network. Okay, so when we last saw the NWA, like I said, they were efforting to, not last saw, but a year ago, they were efforting to do something different, to create content in a different way. Now, the Patreon account is actually still active. Now, one of the things that the Patreon subscribers to Carneyland got that regular YouTube subscribers didn't get was behind-the-scenes conference calls with some of the talent. Now, I could see that there's value in that as well, because you get to talk to some of your favorite wrestlers, ask them questions, kind of figure out what the direction of the NWA is going, or just hearing stories from some of the talent involved with the NWA. Plus, they also made merchandise exclusive to Carneyland subscribers initially, before it was released to the general public. So, all cool things. Definitely think that's worthwhile. The fact that the Patreon subscription service was still going up until recently baffles me. If you're paying for nothing, I mean, you're not just a fan. I mean, you're probably the super fan. I never subscribed to the Patreon account. I felt like that was, it wasn't worth my while. And for people that were still subscribed to it, again, no ill will. I mean, if you support the product, I mean, that's definitely a way of supporting it, but I really don't think you were getting any kind of ROI on that investment. Not a whole lot was going on with the NWA in the last year. But with that being said, I think going forward, the Patreon account is going to be vital for the success of the National Wrestling Alliance, because of the way that things are going to be now, with ticket sales being a thing of the past. I mean, if they can have an audience, it's going to have to be a more intimate gathering, a lot more social distancing until we, get past this pandemic. So, the days of having 400 people inside of the Georgia Public Broadcasting Studios is not going to happen, which means there won't be the meet and greets. And also, that's probably best for your talent anyways, to keep them safe. Unfortunately, there's so many people right now who have to be careful with the pandemic and everything else. And I don't think it's a wise idea to have, large gatherings, with the public and the talent that's supposed to be wrestling. So again, your meet and greets are going to have to change. Your ticket sales are never going to be as strong as they were previously until the pandemic is completely squelched. And maybe the biggest problem is right now there's not even any merchandise. Apparently, when Maureen left the NWA, they did not bring anyone to do merchandising. So even if I wanted to buy an NWA t-shirt at this point, I couldn't buy one directly from the National Wrestling Alliance. And again, that's a bit problematic if you ask me, if you're a business trying to make money. But I really think that there are a lot of opportunities for the National Wrestling Alliance. And again, going back to 1 year ago, before the news of the pandemic really stretched and we really started to understand what was going on, we had Circled Squared. And I think that's still a valuable property that the NWA could use to their benefit. There was also, like I said, Inside the NWA, which I felt was very entertaining. What's Causing All This, again, which I think is also very entertaining. And then the granddaddy of it all, the 10 Pounds of Gold series, which reintroduced the National Wrestling Alliance to a new audience in 2017? So I think it's vital. It's necessary for the NWA to really kind of push forward in 2021. They're going to have to do things maybe a lot differently than what they were used to doing, and they're going to have to figure out new ways to create these revenue streams. Now, you all might be thinking, well, J. Cal, this isn't really your problem, man. You're not Billy Corgan. You're not invested in the NWA. Why is this the subject of your discussion today? Well, to be honest, these are things that I think about. I'm a business owner. I have been a business owner for a few years now, and with my own brand, the Alliance blog, I've been trying to, again, grow my brand for close to 12 years. My brand goes hand in hand with the NWA, and not that I need to fix their problems, but it's something that I think about quite often. And in fact, you could ask DKM. I'm always trying to come up with a solution to problems that aren't really mine, and that's a blessing and a curse. But not so much fantasy booking, just J. Cal thinking out loud. And if the NWA wants to run with any of these ideas, feel free to do so. But things that I've been thinking about over the last few days for the National Wrestling Alliance. And I did want to make the point, the reason why I brought up the Patreon account earlier is because I noticed that they suspended the account, not suspended, they paused charging their customers for the month of March. So, and they refunded their customers in the month of February. But it also makes it, they also said that they're going to start billing customers again in April. So if I'm reading the tea leaves, that makes me think that they're going to be providing a service come April. That maybe they're going to be back in the swing of things. Now, you know, the beginning of spring is Saturday, March 20th, 2021. So if the March 20th is the return of spring, then according to Nick Aldis's conservative guesses, that NWA Power will be back in spring. I mean, we're only a month away, or I guess a month and a half away. Well, today's the 9th. So we're a month and 11 days away from the start of spring, which does not mean that Power is going to be back on March 20th, but if it does return in the springtime, and they do click back on the Patreon account, that means that something's going to be happening. Ryan Romano wants us all to know that Saturday, March 20th, 2021, Mission Pro Wrestling presents Empty Promises, featuring the former NWA World's Woman Champion, Thunder Rosa, who, if she's going to be at Mission Pro, unless she's pulling double duty, I wouldn't quite count on the NWA filming on that day. DKM is quick to point out that spring lasts till June 20th. Yes, it does. Let's see more of your comments. Dave Scooby says they could do a series on the current champions, show some clips of past matches and their matches when they won the title. 5 weeks of content right there. Absolutely, 100%. Dave, that's I say this a lot. You and I think, share the same brave waves. Because I do think that's a great way to reintroduce the champions, and these could be done in vignettes, these could be done in promos, but ultimately, that's the best way to kick off Shockwave. Alright, now, to where I was going with all this anyways, is that you have to be able to satisfy your core audience, which is people like me, people like you, people that are willing to pay for the NWA. DKM says, don't insult Scooby. Sorry, Scooby, I didn't mean to insult you. Stan the Man, what is up? Jay, you are the man. No, you're the man, Stan. Next to the current World Heavyweight Champion and former World Champion Dan Severn. Well, I appreciate that, Stan. But the point I was trying to get to is, how can they use these properties, I think, in the most efficient way? Now, we did hear that Nick Aldis early on during this pandemic said that he had been working with Thomas Latimer on a pilot to do a type of wrestle training show. Wow, that's a great idea. You know, Cody Rhodes more or less stole that idea and is doing that. I mean, he didn't steal it. It's a pretty common thread, but he's doing that on his YouTube channel, the American Nightmare family or whatever it's called. He's doing that currently. What's preventing Aldis and Latimer doing that under the Circled Squared brand? That Circled Squared brand is an untapped commodity. Now, we saw when that first debuted, we saw Luke Hawk and his son. We saw George South. We saw Colby Carino. We saw Freya. I don't even know what her Queen Freya, the Amazon from Alaska. I'm sorry, I don't remember her gimmick right now. Danny Jordan, the Mean Girl. We also saw. I almost left off the Koloff dynasty, and there was a lot of great talent that started to emerge from that. Well, you're going to need all of that, at least as much as you can get, because you have to restock power anyways. So why not start fresh with Circle Squared and turn it into more of a recruitment process and mix it in with what Latimer and Nick Aldis were going to do, and start this training from the tried and true pro wrestling. And you don't have to take every single segment, you don't have to record every single movement from the training class, but this could be compiled into like a 30-minute segment or a 30-minute show every week. Because again, what the NWA is going to have to do is to capitalize on that fan base that they have. They're going to have to give people a reason to tune in. Let's be honest, the landscape in pro wrestling has changed quite dramatically in 1 year. The WWE hasn't run a show outside of Florida, I think, since March. And AEW, same thing. They're running pretty much exclusively in their home. MLW is doing their thing. Primetime Live or United Wrestling Network is doing their thing in Hollywood, and now in Memphis. You've got SWE doing their thing in Texas. But let's not forget too that previously untapped markets like Pluto TV, the app that you can get on your phone or your computer, is now literally offering wrestling for free. There's a full channel that features Defy and PCW Ultra, and even like older stuff like UWF, the Urban Wrestling Federation. So there's like opportunities for people to watch wrestling almost everywhere now that the WWE Network is becoming exclusive to Peacock streaming services. I mean, people who might not have wanted to get the WWE Network because of the $9.99 a month price are now literally getting that plus everything the NBC world has to offer. So it's getting more and more difficult to justify charging a high premium for your service, for your shows. So it's not like the NWA can just stick to just putting maybe Power on their Patreon account and say, here, for $5 a month you can watch our show. They're going to have to be a little bit more what's the word I'm looking for? They're going to have to be a little bit more creative. Now I see some of your guys' comments, and Lamb says NWA on Roku. I mean, that might be a good idea too. Ultimately, we know that their YouTube channel is profitable, but they're not making let me rephrase that. The YouTube channel makes money, but it's certainly not cutting into what they're spending on producing the show. So I think if I was running the NWA, here's what I would do. Like I said, we'd bring back Circled Square, but we'd make that a Patreon exclusive. And the entire show would air every week on let's say Mondays, just because it doesn't conflict with my show before Power. So let's just say Mondays, right? And they could do a 30-minute show every week. And it would basically be Nick Aldis and Tom Latimer helping to train the next guys who are going to showcase on the NWA. And then furthermore, each week they would be allowed to wrestle one match. And that one match again would be featured on another program. Circle Squared is where they're trained. The other program is where they would be showcased. That brings me to Shockwave. Shockwave was very interesting in that it took content from Primetime Live and packaged it as an NWA show. On the surface, it's a good idea, but that limited run is now over. But that property still has value to it. The NWA Shockwave name, you spent four weeks building that up. Why not bring that back and reintroduce some stuff with it? Again, this would be a great place to continue storyline, further promos, and have some matches that have never been seen before. So, like, maybe have the matches with, Nick Aldis and some of his older matches through his first title reign, or mix it up and just have matches that aren't aired on Power. Again, making this a Patreon exclusive, because if it's on Patreon, people have to pay to watch it. Because you can't take NWA Power and put that on Patreon, because people are already used to the fact that that was a free show and aren't going to be interested in paying for it. We found this out when Primetime Live started using NWA talent in hopes that the NWA fan base would come to it, and they didn't. This was in reference to me asking Nick Aldis if he would be interested in defending the NWA World Title on an MZW card in Poland or NSW card in Russia. Aldis responded, "I'd love to defend the title in Poland or Russia." Yeah, I mean, so changing gears to what Stan just mentioned, absolutely. I think Nick Aldis, let's take Nick Aldis, let's talk about Nick Aldis for a minute. Now, I've been extremely critical of the world's heavyweight champion, because I don't like the fact that he's getting these accolades for not really doing a whole lot. Now, that's on the surface. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I don't know if his hands are tied. I don't know if he's unable to take bookings. Maybe his child is immunocompromised and he's fearful for working because he doesn't want to take any risks in getting his child sick. All of these things I completely can understand and can agree, but I do feel like, again, for a world's heavyweight champion to have 5 defenses in 1 year is a disappointment. Jeff Johnson's, now I forget his name, recently did a podcast where he mentioned the NWA title being tarnished because of the lack of defenses. And although I won't go as far to say as it's been tarnished, I do believe that the title needs to be defended to have value. It needs to be showcased to have value. So, again, the NWA is going to have to do a lot to get this machine going again. But for Nick Aldis, right now, if he could get an opportunity to wrestle in Russia, or where else did you say, Poland, 100% I think he should jump on it. Wrestling in China helped the stature of the title for multiple reasons. One, because he was the first, so that helps him as much as it helps the 10 pounds of gold. But it also brought more awareness to the NWA brand. Now, being in China, I was there. I got to be a part of the show. I got to do ringside camera work, photography, not video. But to see how the crowd reacted to Nick Aldis, and there were a lot of NWA fans there, not just fans of wrestling, but NWA fans. I mean, I saw at least 2 or 3 people with NWA replica titles, and they held their replica titles, and they were so excited to see Nick Aldis, and it meant something. Now, I don't know if the NWA has that same kind of following in Russia. I don't know if the NWA is over in Poland. But to the very least, it would be the first time that the NWA World Title had been defended in those areas. And I think, number one, that's great for the NWA. But two, that's great for the legacy of Nick Aldis. Let's make no mistake about it. He is very much aware of the legacy that he's creating, and he's very much pays attention to that. So I think that would be really, really good. I think that would be helpful for the cause. And again, when you're trying to relaunch this brand, because let's face it, taking a year off, taking a knee for a year, you're basically starting over. So again, Circle Squared, Patreon exclusive, right? A Shockwave show, again, a Patreon exclusive. Matches that were taped for Power but never made Power. Maybe that's the exclusive home for the national champion, because I think the TV champion needs to be on Power. That's the closest thing they have for a regular TV show. Maybe it's the home of the tag team champions. I'm not sure. But I think it's very vital to the success of the NWA to keep going with multiple platforms. Now, we know they tape about 3 to 4 days a month when they were running from October 2019, December 2019, January 2020. I think so. It is imperative that they, if they're only running these 3 or 4 days a month, that they got to get the most quality and content that they can. So again, it makes sense to do as much as they can with what they have. So, and that leads us to Power. And of course, NWA Power is kind of what's anchoring the entire brand at this point. Because although the 10 pounds of gold, to me, is the most important thing about the NWA, the place that it's being showcased the most is Power. And that's where we see the emergence of the talent and the stars of the NWA. So guys like Zicky Dice and Ricky Starks, and to a lesser extent, Royce Isaacs and Josephus and the Question Mark. These guys come into prominence because of Power. These guys get recognized because of Power. Now we have these established champions, Elijah Burke, Trevor Murdoch, Serena Deep, Kratos and Stevens, and of course Nick Aldis. These guys need to be the center of attention, of course, but you're going to need to fill that roster, and you're going to have to fill it relatively quick. But all this is a moot point because they haven't even announced television tapings yet. They haven't announced what's going into the works. So this is kind of like an exercise in futility because we're just talking here. But if I could fantasy book for a minute, what I'd really like to see is more Elijah Burke. I'd like to see more Elijah Burke. I'd like to see Elijah Burke get an opportunity to showcase the TV title, but also make inroads to challenging Nick Aldis, because one thing we know since the layoff from the pandemic is we don't have any real challenges now for Nick Aldis and that 10 pounds of gold. We'll probably never see Marty Scurll in an NWA ring again. I mean, I don't know that for certain. But that seems to be where it's heading, is that Marty Scurll, seems to be, for at least now, done with wrestling. Hey, Wrestling with MMA's here. Welcome, Wrestling with MMA. So who is the guy that's going to challenge Nick Aldis? Zicky Dice. Honestly, if they would have played their cards right, Zicky Dice challenging Nick Aldis would have been great. Because there's a lot of already animosity between the two, and they could have maybe, if they could have been professional enough to work a match with the all the animosity that people are aware of, I think that would have been great. And since he hasn't signed yet, he hasn't really signed anywhere. That wouldn't surprise me one bit. But I also don't think it's going to happen either. And DCAM says there's no benefit to Scurll now. Yeah, and that's the problem. You hear Nick Aldis talk about, it seems like the end thing to do right now is these wrestling promotions are working together. It started off with AEW working with AAA, Kenny Omega holding the AWA Mega Champion. I said AWA, the AAA Mega Champion, and now he's the AEW World Champion, and now they're working with Impact, and the Good Brothers are showing up in AEW, and Kenny Omega has made a few appearances on Impact, and now that with Kenta, coming into AEW and putting out the challenge on Jon Moxley. Actually, it was just retribution for what Moxley did on New Japan Strong. So it really does seem like this at least part of the world, they're starting to work together, and they're starting to, this is going to be beneficial for everyone involved. The NWA is kind of involved with Thunder Rosa and Serena Deep, but remember, they're not showcasing Nick Aldis, they're not showcasing Trevor Murdoch or Elijah Burke or Kratos or Stevens, so it's not really to the NWA's benefit. And Aldis keeps bringing up the fact that the NWA needs to stand on their own, which also kind of indicates to me that the relationship they had with Ring of Honor seems to be, at the very least, on the back burner. So Nick Aldis is going to have to create interest on his own. So to DKM's point, Marty Scurll doesn't seem like an option, and if he was, there still doesn't really seem to be a lot of benefit. They're going to have to get some well-known talent or guys who are just really, really good in the ring to kind of set this going forward. And when Nick Aldis says that they need to focus on just the NWA, that makes me also believe that there's probably not an opportunity for them to start working with Pro Wrestling Noah or All Japan Pro Wrestling, because they're not really they're not looking for that right now. And the fact of the matter is, Tim Storm, by storyline wise, is no longer able to challenge further with 10 pounds of gold. It just makes me think that I don't know. I feel like they're kind of in a quandary in and of itself, and what talent's available out there. I mean, a couple weeks ago we talked about some of the names who could be available: Joe Henning, Chris Hero. But all in all, it's not like there's a opportunity for the NWA to capitalize on any of that stuff right now. So I'm seeing more of your comments. Lamb says Zicky Dice would hype the world title match with Aldis like it was the greatest thing ever. He knows how to use Twitch and social media to hype promote things. Absolutely. Zicky Dice, I don't know if you guys have ever watched his show. I know Wrestling with MMA has been a part of his show quite a bit, but if you go to his Twitch show, it's so much fun. It's silly. It's not pro wrestling, but it's got all the hype of the old Carney days. So I think that would be cool. Stan says, I'm sorry, Jay, but my internet froze up on me when I tried to send you a thumbs up. I have to go now, but I plan to check this video out when I get back home. Thanks for mentioning me. Good night. Hey, Stan, thanks for checking us out. I do appreciate you being a part of the show. You're always invited back here every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific. Terry says, is Tim Storm strictly with SWE Fury? Terry, big text. No, I don't think that Tim Storm is exclusive to Fury, but storyline wise, he is not allowed to challenge for the 10 pounds of gold. With his match that actually kicked off kicked off NWA Power, was when Aldis wrestled Tim Storm with a stipulation that if Storm were to lose, he would never be able to challenge for the 10 pounds of gold again. So we'll see what happens with that. More of your comments. Ring of Honor is fine without the NWA right now, thanks to ROH Peer title. They went back to their roots. Yeah, Ring of Honor doesn't need the NWA right now. The NWA is the one that's needing help. The NWA is the one that's going to need somebody to help them. Matt Vermillion says, what does Billy Corgan want? The NWA was a territory based before. Does he want that or one standalone? Well, Matt, it's easy. Corgan has always wanted this to be a standalone promotion. He was never in his interest to restart the territories. It was never in his interest to relaunch the licensings that Bruce Tharpe had, or the membership system that they had with the Robert Trobich era. This has always been about one promotion. So that's what he wants. Essentially that's what he's going to get. And then more of your comments. Dave Scooby says, on the return of NWA Power, have Latimer confront Aldis about the loss of Royce and have Strictly Business implode. Latimer then goes after Aldis for the title, and Camille has to pick sides. I mean, that's a great way to kick off the show. And it's also a great way to make Aldis a babyface, is to just have his whole world come crumbling apart, and the only thing he's got is that 10 pounds of gold. I would assume that Latimer and Camille are the heels in this because, well, it just makes more sense to me. Willie Bowen says the NWA cannot stand on their own if they don't have a full roster, which is true, Willie, to an extent, because you have to remember, Billy Corgan said this before Power even launched, is that the idea of the show was always to have a core roster and then fill in the gaps with people who could come and go as they please. Basically, talent not under contract. Eddie Kingston was never under contract. Colt Cabana wasn't under contract. And I don't believe Ken Anderson was either. A lot of these guys weren't under contract. This was just an opportunity for them to showcase. They would be here and then they'd be gone. And I think that's still a winning formula if you use it the right way. You know, when the NWA does relaunch, they are going to have to find some bodies. I would imagine that Watts is hot on their list. Eric Watts from Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. They've already had him in matches with Eli Drake. He was the tag team partner for Elijah Burke. I would imagine that he's hot on their radar. Matt Vermillion says, One standalone. Try Texas or Florida, not Georgia. Just an opinion. Yeah, I mean, that Matt, I'm not sure if you're speaking about the ability to run a show standalone, or what's. I don't exactly know what you mean. DKM says he's not sure that not under contract worked real well. I mean, think about it. The show. If we go back 1 year, the show was doing fine. Most of our complaints are about the lack of programming. The show itself, NWA Power, was very well received, minus a few hiccups, minus a few tech snafus. I mean, for the most part, the show was pretty well received. And I think that having certain talents under contract wasn't that big of a deal. Again, Eddie Kingston didn't go to AEW until Power stopped running shows. And that, I mean, that's my opinion. I could see DKM said it was okay, but I mean, for that Power audience, I think it was pretty well received. I mean, I could be mistaken, but I felt like the fans of the NWA got what they wanted. They had a show. You know, DKM's bringing up that it was losing viewership, and that's true. Its viewership did suffer, but I think at the end of the day, they were still pretty happy with what they were getting. And again, they did lose steam. They lost steam after Jim Cornette, and that was pretty well documented. So we'll see. Willie Bowen says the wrestlers from Mission Pro and United Wrestling Network Primetime Live can be contenders for Nick Aldis and Serena Deeb's NWA titles. And then DKM says it to be more than the NWA fans, it has to get new fans. And you're right. I'm not questioning that at all. And I think that's why you're going to have to bring in some talent. You're going to have to bring in some names. And not just guys from the indies. I mean, you're going to have to figure out a way to get guys like Mike Bennett and guys like Joe Henning and guys like, you know, Chris Dickinson. I'm not saying those guys. I'm saying guys like them. Guys who are either killing it on the indies and making their names, or guys who have already established these names who are looking to still push forward. Again, I think Elijah Burke as a pro wrestler, not as a manager, is a lot more entertaining than him talking about looking for his 4 horsemen. I mean, I think Elijah Burke challenging for Nick Aldis' titles where I wish the NWA would go. I wish Elijah Burke would go through that best of 7, defeating, you know, all comers, whether it be, you know, if it's Tim Storm, or if it's Tom Latimer, or if it's, you know, Trevor Murdoch, or if it's, you know, Matt Cross, or Eric Watts, or Eli Drake, or James Storm, or whoever it ends up being. If he can get to that world title picture, the promos alone between Elijah Burke and Nick Aldis, I think, are money. And I think that would be a great way to kind of get it going again. Now, DKM asks if Eli Drake is involved, and the answer is, I don't know. I don't know. Now, I don't think he would be opposed to making a return to the NWA, but as of right now, I don't think he's involved with the NWA. Now, we haven't heard specifics about contracts. I don't know who is still contracted outside of Thunder Rosa and Nick Aldis. Serena Deeb is under contract with AEW. As far as J.R. Kratos and Aaron Stevens go, Elijah Burke and Trevor Murdoch, I don't know that they're under contract. I think they just have some sort of agreement in place that when the NWA runs again, that they will be featured on the program. But I don't have any specifics on contracts. Sorry about the camera, guys. So I don't know if I actually established what I was trying to say, but I really feel like the NWA has a lot of potential, and I hate saying that about a wrestling promotion that's been around since, at least in this form, since 2017. I mean, we're talking about, they're going on 4 years of actively promoting, but the caveat to that is if you're only a part-time promoter and your wrestling promotion is only part-time, then you're only going to get part-time results. Nick Aldis is not a part-time wrestler. He's not. Thunder Rosa is not a part-time wrestler. She just isn't. And, you know, if you're Billy Corgan, you got to figure out a way to get this show going. You just have to. Now, I was talking in the Discord page today for This Is Pro Wrestling under their NWA channel, and one thing that somebody said is like, well, he should just sell it. Billy should just sell the NWA. What I think a lot of people are missing out on is, although Billy Corgan isn't a multi-billionaire, he is a multi-millionaire. There's no need for him to sell the NWA just because he's getting bored with it. And if that's the case, he could just put it away and we're all out of it. We don't have anything to do with it. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I don't think you lock up Nick Aldis for another year and pay him to just sit around and do nothing. I think the plan is that they'll be back and promoting. But, again, it's really anyone's guess. Terry McDermott said, is Aaron Stevens wrestling in any other promotion? And the answer is no. He's been on Primetime Live in the NWA capacity, but not anything outside of the NWA. He works for Hollywood. He's one of the, as Lamb said, he's one of the booker. He is the head booker of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, but he's not actually competing in the ring. You guys want to see something cool? The only other title belt that I have, I was just gifted this last week from our friends over at NWA Gold. This is the British Commonwealth Championship, or at least a replica thereof. Now, that title was originally designated by UK Hammerlock, and mostly made famous by Drew Onyx. Now, Drew Onyx is a former NWA North American champion, of course, the aforementioned British Commonwealth champion, part of that Quebec wrestling scene that introduced the world to Kevin Steen and Kevin Owens, and Sami Zayn. But that title, the title has a lot of significance for me as a wrestling fan, because that British Commonwealth title was often referred to as the Other World's Heavyweight Championship. Now, Drew Onyx did a great job of defending the title in Bermuda, defending it in the UK, Canada, North America, but that title became a fixture of what would later become Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. It was the Inoki Dojo. It was still NWA Pro Wrestling, but it was under the Inoki Dojo, where we saw talents like Alex Kozlov, Carl the Machine Gun Anderson, Mikey Nichols from Australia, and of course Fergal Devitt, aka Finn Balor, competing for that title. And that was the first championship recognized, the first NWA championship that was recognized by NWA Pro Wrestling. Now, of course, they always honored the world's heavyweight champion, but that was a fixture of Impact Wrestling. And that title predated the Hollywood Heritage Championship, which at the time would later be called the NWA Heritage title. That belt, the British Commonwealth title, not only held by Finn Balor, but also Scrap Daddy Adam Pearce, Paul Tracy from Ireland, and of course Drew Onyx is a multi-time British Commonwealth Championship. But I thought it was pretty cool. Again, if you guys could do me a solid, go give NWA Gold a follow. Go give him a like. He's on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Go give him a like, because he's a good dude, and he gifted me that cool title, so that was pretty awesome. Matt Vermillion says, that's why I suggest Texas versus Georgia, better recruiting area, better travel, rabid fans, more potential investors. You know, Matt, the show is a YouTube show, so it's not like they really could go anywhere with that. They could tape in Texas, they could tape in Hollywood. In fact, I mean, there was talks that they wanted to move the tapings to the Thunder Studios, where they were shooting Primetime Live. At least it was on the table of discussion, but that was never really in the plans. And I think there's something special about that Georgia Public Broadcasting Studios. That setup worked magnificently. Wow, I can't talk anymore, guys. I thought that was a good place for them to be. I was in that audience once, or actually twice, and it worked very well. It gave that old school Jim Crockett Promotions feel that they were looking for. They were looking for that. So I felt that really brought that audience with them, and it really created that, that je ne sais quoi. It just brought that atmosphere and made it feel right. Now, with that being said, I sit there and look at SWE Fury, and I see those crowds in Texas, and yeah, they're a rowdy bunch. Same thing with Mission Pro. You go watch a Mission Pro match, a nice rowdy crowd, and I know it's easier to produce live events in Florida. It's easier to produce live events in Texas. But in terms of recruitment, I mean, they can bring talent in from anywhere. I mean, if you look at the first set, the first series, the first run of NWA Power, I mean, Cole Cabana's from Chicago, Ken Anderson is from I think Wisconsin still. Aaron Stevens was living out in L.A. Dave Marquez is an L.A. guy. Nick Aldis lives in Tennessee. Tim Storm is from Texas. Latimer, I think, is also in Tennessee. Camille, I think, was also in Tennessee. So it's like it doesn't really matter where these talents come from. They can all meet up in one spot. In terms of investors, I don't know that Billy wants investors. Does he want sponsorship? Absolutely. I'm sure they would love to have someone come in and buy commercial time for them. And if they could find a way to do that, I think that would help the show and offset some of their production costs. But I don't think that they want to move the public broadcasting studios to Texas or to really anywhere else. I think, when the front office for the NWA, a lot of those pieces were living in Tennessee and North Carolina, I think it would have been very easy to move a production to, say, the Wrestle... what is that company called? The wrestling company in North Carolina that... High Spots. High Spots had a venue that they could have used, they could have made it work if they wanted to do like empty arena taping or small audience taping. They really wanted to be a part of that Georgia Public Broadcasting Studios. In fact, let's be honest, you got Dr. Robert Stinson going to the local government agencies in Georgia and having them declare October 21st the National Wrestling Alliance Day in Georgia. I mean, there's obviously support there, and again, the fan base was a good, solid fan base. And they were actually doing a lot of community outreach. I know Aldis and Thunder Rosa and a few others appeared via, Zoom chats and stuff with the local high school out there that had a wrestling club. So I really do feel like they were effort team to make this a thing. But again, the pandemic really put a hitch in all of this. It really, really messed everything up. When the pandemic clears out, we'll see the NWA. It's going to return in some shape or form. What it is, that'll be really up to Billy Corgan and those he puts in place. But I do think there's a lot of opportunity. On another wrestling forum, I've been called a hater. I've been called Nick Aldis's biggest hater. But nothing could be further from the truth. I think Nick Aldis is a fantastic world heavyweight champion. I think him defending the title in the places that he has been outstanding. I hope he does get a chance to go to Russia or Poland. I hope they do take that 10 pounds of gold back to England. I hope to see Aldis defend that title more and more and more. My problems with Aldis have never been his in-ring work, his promos. My problems with Aldis is the fact that he's allowed himself to get stagnant. And I think in this day and age, when a cell phone can record as almost a good a quality as my Nikon here that's filming this podcast, there's no reason for them not to do a live match here and there, to do something exclusive for Patreon or do something exclusive for YouTube, or somehow just connect with that audience. That's my biggest problem. Again, I see 14 people are watching this show right now between YouTube and Twitch. I definitely appreciate everyone being a part of this weekly program. every Tuesday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, and I'm not sure what time zone it is if you're in Germany, but this is what we do. We talk about the NWA, we talk about the United Wrestling Network, and we have a lot of fun doing it. Your opinions are respected. We're all here because we're all fans of the brands, and so again, thank you for joining us. We are also on all social media. It's nearly midnight. Oh, Lamb, you're a champ, bro. You're a champ. We're also on all social medias at the Alliance Blog. You can follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and all that other good stuff. I see some more of your comments, so let's keep going here a little bit. Matt Vermillion wants to see Nick Aldis versus Minoru Suzuki. I mean, that would be badass. That would be incredible. Ryan Romano says, that's a good word for it. Nick Aldis has gotten stagnant. He's holding perhaps the most prestigious title in all professional wrestling, and he doesn't seem to be doing enough with it. Again, forgive me for butchering your podcast name, if it's Jeff Johnson or Jim Johnson, I can't remember right now, but he brought up that point. He said, the title defended 5 times last year. The WWE title was defended 12 times. The Impact title was defended like 15 times. The AEW title was defended 11 times. And I get that. But we're talking about the 10 pounds of gold. Okay, we're talking about a title that didn't need to have its own television show. The World's Heavyweight Championship, for all those years that Adam Pearce was World's Heavyweight Champion, Blue Demon Jr., the Tokyo Monster Kahagas, Rob Conway, Jax Dane, Tim Storm. There was no formal program that highlighted these guys. They took that title and defended it everywhere. Adam Pearce took the 10 pounds of gold and defended it in Australia. He defended it in Germany. He defended it in the UK. He defended it in Canada, in Mexico, and all over the United States. And there was no official NWA television program. I mean, there was Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. There was NWA Mountain State. There was NWA Smoky Mountain. But again, none of that was a central focus. It didn't prevent Adam Pearce from taking that title anywhere. That was just a byproduct. NWA Power doesn't need to be what drives the 10 pounds of gold. It doesn't need to be what drives Nick Aldis. And in fact, if it were up to me, you would see less of Nick Aldis on NWA Power. Nick Aldis would be out defending the title across the world. In Japan, in Mexico, in Canada, in UK, in Germany, in Australia, everywhere, back to China. That's what he should be doing. Because he's the ambassador of the NWA. He is the living embodiment of the National Wrestling Alliance. The title, the 10 pounds of gold, is the marquee. It's the biggest name in the NWA. That belt needs to be showcased anywhere and everywhere it can be. And for the title to sit stagnant for since January to August, that's terrible. Now, I'm glad he did get that defense in August against Nobi Bryant. That was great. And the defense against Michael Bennett and Primetime Live in September, that's great. But the title needs to be out there. I mean, Ric Flair, there's so many comparisons people want to make Nick Aldis to, Harley Race, Ric Flair, or Nick Aldis to Ric Flair, Nick Aldis to Gerald Briscoe. If you want to compare him to legends, you go right ahead, but just realize he fails to stack up against these legends. And it's very early in his career, too. I mean, this is his second run with the title. The guy's, 35? He's not that old. You're going to see Aldis around for quite some time unless, barring something horrible. And he should be, because he's a great talent. But again, I know we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're still in it, guys. It's not over yet. We're not through it. But when so many other wrestling promotions have found a way to do this, why hasn't the NWA? And again, it's, he's defended the title outside of the NWA. In fact, he's had more defenses outside of the NWA in 2020 than he did in the NWA in 2020. He had more defenses outside the NWA in 2021. I mean, he's defended the title 6 times since last year. That's it. That's dreadful. And although NWA Power is extremely important for the success of the NWA, the 10 pounds of gold, when it becomes stagnant, it invalidates the claim that it's the real World's Championship. Because I see Kenny Omega defending his title. I see Kenny Omega, challenging for titles. I see, Drew McIntyre defending his title. I see Roman Reigns defending his title. I see Rich Swann defending his title. I see, the Samoan Werewolf, Jacob Fatu, defending his title. You can't sell me on the fact that the pandemic is going to prevent champions from being champions. But if you're not defending the title, it's disappointing. Terry McDermott, Big Tex. Tex says, in the 70s, when I was a kid, you rarely saw the world champion on TV. I mean, things have evolved, Terry, and I'm not trying to say anything negative about you, but the title doesn't need to be spotlighted on TV. The TV is where you grow your stars. The 10 pounds of gold should be able to stand on its own without TV. Nick Aldis, if he is the man that he thinks he is, that a lot of his fan base thinks he is, he's the draw with the 10 pounds of gold. That should be enough. You shouldn't have to see him on TV. If you see that title that he's holding, you know who he is. That's how it used to be anyways. That's how I think it should be. I'd rather have TV time to help grow your brand, grow your stars, because again, all this is set. He should already be well enough known that he doesn't need to be on every episode of Power. He doesn't need to defend the title on every episode of Power. In fact, I think the magic number would be about 20 to 24 defenses a year, and only half of those should be on for the NWA. My opinion, my humble opinion. Willie Bowen likes Queen Freya. I mean, hey man, she's a good looking lady. Terry Tex says, how did you find out my old school nickname? Yeah, Tex, we're friends on Facebook. I see what other people call you, so I just decided to roll with it. I hope you didn't mind. I didn't think you would. But that's going to do it for us, guys. I am so blown away by your support, by you guys hanging out with me every Tuesday. Again, we're going to continue to do this throughout the year, regardless of what happens with the NWA, regardless of what happens with the United Wrestling Network. Real quick, let's talk about the United Wrestling Network. I was going to wrap it up, but we didn't talk about what's going on for the UWN. So you guys know that Championship Wrestling from Memphis is a thing now. Their TV taping is February the 14th. They're going to be going on TV, I think about a week after that. Then their next TV, by the way, tickets sold out for that. How awesome is that for, Dustin and Maria Starr, that they're starting to, that idea that it was 3 years ago was an idea is now going into motion. They're going to start their own weekly television show live in Memphis. I think that's amazing. That's great. The NWA is doing their thing, but the United Wrestling Network is continuing to grow. Championship Wrestling from Hollywood will begin filming again very, very soon. Championship Wrestling from Arizona is set to start taping very, very soon. Memphis is taping this week. And then we've got the big news that the United Wrestling Network is getting ready to finally have that finals match between Michael Bennett and Chris Dickinson for the United World's Championship. And it's supposed to be, the rumors are that it could be somewhere in Africa. It's not going to be here. It's not going to be in Memphis. It's not going to be in Long Beach. It's not going to be in Hollywood. It's going to be out of the country. So a lot of exciting news coming with them. But on top of that too, now they've just announced that they're going to bring that Championship Wrestling model that was so successful in Memphis to New Orleans. Nolans. Am I saying that right? Nolans? So that's awesome. Really exciting stuff. Very happy to hear it. I think if you guys are not watching United Wrestling Network, you should check it out. Championship Wrestling from Hollywood airs locally in my market on Saturdays, but they're uploading those full shows onto YouTube as well as Fight TV. You can check them out. Ryan Romano says, really, New Orleans? Yeah, man, New Orleans. And I mean, that's a stone's throw away from Buda, Texas, where they're where Mission Pro is at. Wouldn't be surprised if you see some of the talent from Mission Pro eventually, migrate to Championship Wrestling from Louisiana when it happens. Right now, it's still they're going to do a centralized version of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. They're going to localize it to the New Orleans market, just like they did with Championship Wrestling from Memphis. And if things go well, it's going to migrate into its own thing. It's going to be its own television show, just like Memphis. They're trying to do that in San Francisco. They tried to do it in Amarillo. Not a lot of success there. Tried to do it in Houston. Didn't work out. So now they're looking at Nolans, and they're looking at San Francisco, and they're still trying to work with that model. And I think you're going to see some, if it's successful, you'll see more and more of these Championship Wrestling from whichever cities, which is great for the United Wrestling Network. I mean, they're about to crown their world champion. They currently have the TV champion, Levi Shapiro, the tag team champions, the Bodega. We're big fans of the Bodega here, so again, all good stuff. And Ryan seems excited about that. So cool, Ryan. I mean, it's probably not going to be a live event just yet. They're probably a year out from that. But if things go well, I mean, you make sure you're checking out the show locally on the CBS in Lake Charles. And like Lamb says here in the comments, the premiere of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood is February 28th, so the last Saturday of the month. Support it, get out there and be a champion for it, and maybe you too will have your own local United Wrestling Network affiliate wrestling shows. But again, we're going to wrap it up. We went a little bit late today. Been going a little bit late for a while, but again, man, this is so much fun for me. I hope you guys are having as much fun too. We do have the audio versions of the podcast available on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, Google, anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Just say the Alliance blog. I'm not going to try to turn anyone's devices on today. And again, coming soon, the Alliance guys will be back on Thursday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. We're working on getting some more content created for you guys there. And we're here every Tuesday from 5 to 6 o'clock Eastern, or 2 to 3 Pacific, however you want to look at it. This is a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. Make sure you visit that website for all your news and information. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you guys to check out the merchandise page on the Alliance-Wrestling.com site. You can get cool things like a hat like this, or t-shirts. And we'll be putting more merchandise up soon. So that's going to do it for us. Ryan Romano also wants you to know that Gary, Will, and Rob are live today at 5:30 Central Time. The boys over at This Is the NWA podcast, #NWA fam. I love those guys. Tell them J. Cal sent you if you go check it out. And I always like to leave you guys with this. In the infamous words of that great Chinese philosopher Bruce Lee, absorb what is useful. Reject what is useless. And what is. We'll see you next time.